Here we go again, another episode where we have a villain being reformed. But does this episode do it right? We'll find out as we talk about House and Garden right now.
Hi, come on in.
Hello friends, welcome back to the show. So glad to see you once again. And if you're new here, thanks for tuning in. I hope that you'll stick around and hit that subscribe button because this is the show for you. If you grew up on Batman the Animated Series and became a huge Batman fan today, then you are in the right place. Because here we talk about each and every episode of Batman the Animated Series, now 24 years later, from the perspective of an adult looking back on watching the show as a kid. And today we're talking about House and Garden, which originally aired on May 2nd, 1994. We've seen this type of episode before. I think most recently it was the Penguin having reformed. Now we see Poison Ivy giving away her villainous ways and now deciding to start a family and leave a life of crime. But this episode actually has some really neat qualities to it that make it an entertaining episode, despite the fact that we have the villain wanting to reform and then obviously it not going well. But we'll talk all about that right after my 60-second rundown of the episode. Here we go. We see a swamp thing-like creature climbing up the side of a building and take some jewels from this eligible bachelor. Batman and Commissioner Gordon go to investigate, and there's some evidence of plants and poison elements. And Batman goes, well, obviously it's got to be poison ivy. And Commissioner Gordon goes, no, that's not the case. She's now reformed. She's been out of Arkham. She's rehabilitated, and now she's married and happy and living in the suburbs. So they travel out to the suburbs of Gotham. They go to their house and look, and obviously she is very happy, and she's given up her villainous ways, and she has stepkids now. And so Batman calls Dick Grayson, who is at college and is getting very friendly with a lady friend of his. And he is, so Batman calls and says, I need you to look into the college professor there. And he does. And he goes, yeah, I had a class with him. Meanwhile, the swamp thing-like creature breaks into Dick Grayson's room, kidnaps him, and then attacks Batman and says, listen, if you want to see the kid, then you've got to give me all this money. So Batman goes to meet him at the docks and deliver that, but he had no intention of giving up Dick Grayson and sweeps him, and they fight and they duel, and then they get Dick Grayson back, or now Robin, and they go, boy, I don't think all that meets the eye is here with Poison Ivy. So they go into her greenhouse to see what's going on, and they investigate and find the actual doctor in a vat of holding tank underground. Poison Ivy comes in and says, yes, this was all just a ruse because I've been able to harvest children from him and plant life and create my own. And then they turn into these swamp-like creatures, and then they attack and this group of them, because Batman used these herbicides in the water tank to kill them. And then Poison Ivy also crumbles because she is a clone of herself as well. And then meanwhile, she's able to fly away scot-free. Not to make up excuses, but it's the names that get me hung up. It's all the names.
Thank you, Miss Isley.
My pleasure, Commissioner. Though it's Carlisle now. Mrs. Pamela Lillian Carlisle.
Don't jump up there. Don't do it. Okay, do it. All right. So yes, this is another one of those the villain has reformed episodes. But there's a couple of things that they do nice in this episode, and I think it's in part the perspective that they put on this. Like we saw with the Birds of a Feather episode with the Penguin, was that we saw him getting out and we saw him making this choice that I'm going to be fine, and it starts out and we see all of this. This one is, in the context of the Batman universe, we haven't heard from Poison Ivy in a while. Then these crimes start happening. Batman automatically deduces that it's got to be Poison Ivy.
Why don't you ask the woman who made it? Poison Ivy.
She was our first guest, but we ruled her out.
And then we meet up with her and see that she has been reformed for the last 6 months. She's been out of Arkham. She's now married. She has these stepkids. And her life is good, and she's happy, and she truly seems reformed.
But that's all in the past. Believe me. I look back on what I was, and I shudder.
And so we don't know what's going on. And I think that perspective puts a little bit of a different weight to the episode, because she could be reformed. And by all accounts, she has been reformed for the last 6 months, because they haven't heard anything from her. I guess what I'm saying is it's not that she just made the decision, okay, that's it, no more crime, I'm good now, and Batman's waiting for her to slip up. He's looking at it after it's already happened and going, following her around and going, yeah, she looks like she's leading a normal life.
For the first time in my life, I'm happy.
I'm beginning to think you're right.
And incidentally, in that element, we see a side of Batman that we don't get to see very often. We see Batman and Commissioner Gordon show up at their house in the suburbs, and we see Batman following around in just a normal day-to-day life, which puts Batman in the suburbs and during the day. It just looked really weird to see Batman climbing around in the trees and looking after her in this sense.
What's she doing now, sir?
Buying squash.
And when she brings the kids home, too, that they say,
Can we watch cartoons?
After your homework.
which I have to say would have been torture. I came home and immediately sat down and watched Batman the Animated Series and Tiny Toons and Darkwing Duck and the shows that were on during that kind of 2 to 4 block. Exo Squad was in there for a while. And then once I did that and then I ate, then it was homework time. So
This is a dead end. I haven't found anything that...
And then we have a very contrasted scene on the docks with the fog and when Batman's trying to meet up with the creature thing to deliver the money. It's just, that's a great like film noir look, and so it's a great setting and it's a great balance because, okay, we get to see Batman during the day, now he's back in Gotham and at night and in the docks in the city.
Goodbye, Mr. Wayne.
So again, the mystery of this, of really questioning and going, has Ivy really reformed? Is she really good? Is there a copycat? Is somebody got a hold of her mutagen and is now creating their own creatures? Or what's the deal? Because obviously this guy, this creature thing is plant-like or plant-based. So she's got to be behind it somehow.
But we're still in the dark as to who's behind this.
You don't think it's the plant lady?
All she wants is to be left alone with her husband and sons.
One thing that I would have liked to see is if they would have tried to partner with her. You know, obviously she knows poison, she knows plants, so there was a point where Batman was saying, yeah, maybe you have turned good. But it would have been neat to see Batman go, hey, so why don't you give me a hand? Why don't you help me out and figure this out together? Obviously she wouldn't have been able to because she was behind it.
She's insane. Has to be stopped. You don't know what she's done.
And the part that I didn't quite remember of this episode was the end. I knew that she was behind it, and I knew that those were her creatures, but it takes a really dark turn, a really kind of creepy turn there when they finally go into her lower level of the greenhouse and find the professor that's in that vat, and they rescue him. And then you hear the babies calling for mom.
Mommy.
No.
It isn't possible.
Mommy. Mommy.
Wow. I don't remember that as a kid, and I'm really glad I didn't, because I really feel like that would have gave me nightmares. And then to learn that those babies grow up to look just like her husband, so then I'm assuming that that's who we met earlier was the husband creature before they finally mature into the Swamp Thing-like creature. I keep calling it Swamp Thing. It's not Swamp Thing. It's just a plant baby human monster.
Its final phase before it burns itself out. The creature becomes my willing enforcer and bodyguard.
All that's really creepy. But great battle. We get to see Batman and Robin and Poison Ivy. And then we have one last twist to find out that Ivy was able to replicate or duplicate herself. And that's who we've been seeing.
But Ivy could replicate herself.
What?
That in itself was a neat twist that I completely forgot about. And it's one of those scenes that really makes you go, okay, what point in the episode were we seeing the real Ivy? And at what point were we seeing the clone Ivy?
Guess you weren't the only one with an escape plan. Huh, Batman?
So when it comes time to rank this episode, yeah, it's one of those stories that we've seen done before, but at the very least, it's not that classic story, villain does bad, Batman stops him kind of episode. It has a great mystery to it because they don't really show their cards, they don't really show their hand that it is Poison Ivy until closer to the end. So as Batman's questioning whether she is really reformed or not, or behind it, we're also questioning it. And like I said, just having some different settings for the episode kind of changes it up and makes it kind of a fresher take on this. I've never been a huge Poison Ivy fan, but I have to say this is one of the better Poison Ivy episodes. So for all those reasons, it kind of fell in the middle for me, right at the number 30 spot of my favorite episodes so far. It's right below The Man Who Killed Batman because there's just such a fun element to that episode. And honestly, when it comes down to nitpicky details, and sometimes, like in this case, I remembered The Man Who Killed Batman episode more than I remember this one. So in some way I go, well, that one obviously stuck with me more as a kid than this one did. So that's got to count for something. But I do think that episode just has a neat kind of flavor, different point of view kind of style in the episode. But I do have it beating out On Leather Wings because, and that episode's actually the exact opposite because I didn't like that episode much when I was growing up. Watching it now, 25 years later, it is much better than I thought it was. But when it comes down to being compared to this one's a little bit better because the twists and the turns and the different styles that are in there just push it just above On Leather Wings. So there we have it. This episode sitting at the number 30 spot of my favorite episodes so far.
One little kiss, and dear Stephen was my slave. He was useful in signing my release papers and for supplying certain raw materials for my experiment.
So as far as reform episodes go, do you think that they did this one well? Or is there another episode that you can think of where we have a villain reforming that does it better than this one? Let me know in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to click the like button. If you want to see more of these episodes, you got to hit that subscribe so that you're notified every time that a new episode comes out. I have new reviews of Batman the Animated Series coming out every Tuesday and Thursday. So this coming Thursday, I have a new episode coming out reviewing Sideshow. So you don't want to miss that. As always, thank you so much for watching. I'm Andy Knode. I'll see you soon.